It's time now for the political analysis of Fromm and Fuller. Al Fromm, former political advisor to President Bill Clinton, and Craig Fuller, former political advisor to both Presidents Ronald Reagan and George H.W. Bush. Good morning, all. Craig, as we go through this incredible moment in American history, I guess the question this morning for both of you is, what does a constitutional crisis mean? We are seeing this every day that the Trump administration is basically ignoring court rulings, trying to get away with not acting on them. And I guess at the end of the day, beyond the theater that it causes, I'm wondering what kind of damage it causes to the country.
Well, it's certainly an unusual time. It's not an entirely unique time. There's been other times in our history where people have suggested we have a constitutional crisis. It usually occurs when a president is in violation of the law and as you suggested, ignoring court orders, or his administration is. And if we're not completely there yet, we're certainly headed that direction. And I guess it shouldn't surprise us. I mean, Donald Trump has a long history of believing somehow he's above or beyond the law. And while that's not the case, he's certainly conducting himself, and his administration is conducting themselves in a way that suggests they're going to do what they are going to do, and the judges can issue their orders, and they may or may not be obeyed. So it is an extremely bad situation from where I sit anyway. I'm not a lawyer. I was reflecting on it, thinking in other times where you have an administration that's acting in ways that are not consistent with the law goes after people within the administration. And somebody, for example, when that airplane was moving all the El Salvadorian people that had been picked up to El Salvador, somebody decided to ignore the judge's order and said, keep the planes flying. Well, that person ought to be found, and that person ought to seek some sort of legal review. In the case that I lived through, where we had a member of the National Security Council staff, Ollie North, taking the money that was coming in with the sale of arms to Israel that eventually went to the Iranians. It was Ollie North that was prosecuted. It was John Poindexter, another national security advisor. And while the president's actions were investigated, he was found not liable, was not prosecuted. George Bush said a mistake had been made. So we faced a very difficult situation in which federal laws had been violated by the administration, but the people who actually were engaged in it were the ones that were pursued and prosecuted. I think if that kind of action was taken, it would have a chilling effect, that you don't just salute Donald Trump in the Oval Office, and after you tell him he's doing a wonderful job, go out and do things that are inconsistent with the courts. And that, I think, needs to start happening, because these officials are acting as though they're immune from the law. And while the Supreme Court may have given certain kind of immunity to Donald Trump, they did not give it to people who serve in the administration. And their loyalty is to the Constitution, not to Donald Trump solely, even though he may think otherwise. So I think we're in a very, very difficult situation. I think this administration shows they are willing to go up against almost any institution. And I must say that I think Harvard took a very principled stand when you looked at what the Trump administration was asking of them in a letter signed, by the way, not by Donald Trump, but by lower level officials, and saying, either you do all these things and you hire faculty and you change course kind of direction, and or we're taking away $2 billion. It's just unthinkable. But Harvard may be the maybe the bridge too far for the administration. I have to imagine that over at Harvard Law School and the Kennedy School and every other element of Harvard, very, very smart people are figuring out how to counter this. And I don't know, matching wits with Stephen Miller and the OMB director, I think I placed my bets on Harvard.
Al, there's a lot of definition to what a recession is, but you wonder if there is something even close to the equivalent in terms of a constitutional crisis.
I don't think we're quite at a constitutional crisis, even though we're fast approaching one. And to be honest with you, I think the Trump administration wants to provoke one over the immigration issue. I guess we'll see. I mean, Craig made some good points about what would happen in a normal administration, how the Justice Department would pursue people who have violated court orders. But it's pretty clear that that isn't top of the agenda for Pam Bondi. Yesterday we had the the ruling by Judge Boasberg that he's beginning an investigation of contempt, and if he does decide to bring criminal contempt charges, then the question is who's going to prosecute, and if the Justice Department doesn't, then I believe he has the power to appoint somebody to prosecute, but that person actually still has to report through the Department of Justice. So I guess Pam Bondi could shut it off. And if that happened, I think, most people would say we're in a constitutional crisis. But I think I think there's something else going on. And that is that Trump and the administration wants the focus on immigration. I mean, to a lot of us, we think this Garcia case is one that may actually cause him some political damage. I don't think he thinks that in the least. He thinks, as long as he's on the side of deporting gang members and criminals, and I mean, if you saw yesterday, the White House released sort of an ambiguous report that came out of some Prince George's County law enforcement that sort of implied that somebody said he was a gang member and he wore a Chicago Bulls hat. I mean, my God, what are they going to do? Are they going to arrest Mike Wilbon, or some other Chicago Bulls fan? But the reason they want this is the only issue right now that's cutting for them really is this issue of immigration. Most Americans don't pay attention to the details. Chris Cillizza had a very good piece on this last night. Most Americans don't pay attention to the details. They don't know the legal ins and outs of all this, but they generally approve getting rid of violent criminals and deporting them if they're here illegally. But what the Trump administration doesn't want to have is talk about the economy. I mean, look, the 2026 election are going to be a referendum on Trump. And Trump's biggest promise, essentially, in the 2020 campaign was he was going to get rid of inflation on day one. And he didn't promise to destroy the retirement of senior citizens. He didn't promise a recession. He didn't promise prices likely to go through the roof. And think about what happened yesterday. This is what he didn't want to talk about. Your 401k, my 401k went way down. Okay. So for us, it's a daily hit. For most people, it may be, really damaging to their ability to retire. They may have to work longer if they can have a job. He doesn't want focus on what Chairman Powell said yesterday of the Federal Reserve, that these tariffs are inevitably going to cause inflation. and maybe a recession. And, so those are the things that actually hit home to people because people feel it. Right now, he's, so- the economy is sort of going through what I call a sugar high, because what's happening is people are buying a lot of stuff that they think are going to come under the tariffs. And so, but that's not going to last. And, before the end of the year, we'll see the real consequences of this crazy tariff policy he has. And when those consequences hit home, they're going to hit very hard at the voters that Trump needs. So he wants attention on anything else, and if he can keep attention on immigration, which so far, people don't like necessarily the way he's doing it, but basically overall, that's a strong issue for him because they want to get undesirables out of the country who are here illegally. He'll focus attention on Harvard because he talks to the 2/3 of the people in the country who don't have four-year college degrees, and the elite colleges, and I know this because I'm on the board of one of them, and are really taking a hit and have taken a hit over the last 2 or 3 years. So look, uh, I think I saw a piece not too long ago, and I think there's some real merit to this. When you think about the Trump administration, think about WWE, the world, wrestling, professional wrestling. It's all phony. You never know what the truth is or not. It's all for show, and it's all bravado. And that's what Trump does. He runs a television show out of the White House. And as I've said all year, at some point, reality catches up with the reality TV. And, if it doesn't, he'll be fine. But my guess is with economic policies and this crazy tariff policy, we're going to see impacts on the economy that are going to impact very directly the people that he needs. As the year goes on, and if the economy inflation starts to come back, the economy slows, I would expect to see a number of Republicans in vulnerable districts to start moving away from Trump, and that's what he's trying to prevent by his diversion.
Craig, I want to circle back to something that Al brought up, and that is this possibility that Donald Trump will attempt to fire the chairman of the Federal Reserve, Chairman Powell. This will only multiply these complex issues, won't it?
Well, that would definitely multiply the issues by a big factor. I think he's going to conduct himself, for the balance of this year and into next year, in what it can only be described as a reckless way. But Al made a couple points, and related to your question. What are we going to do? And I get that question asked a lot. And this morning, for this week, I've been out in California. And here in California, the governor of California is now suing the Trump administration over tariff policy. And this is not like some isolated thing, because the stories are now putting the focus back on the tariff policy and the consequences to the economy of California. Exactly as Al said, what Trump would not want to have happen, and what Republicans running for office would not want to have happen. So it's a very smart move politically. I don't know the merits of the legal case, but my guess is this is not frivolous in any manner. It's also in some of the articles been mentioned that states' attorneys general around the country have had people and have themselves been on like almost a daily conference call to talk about what their state can do, what their state is doing, where there's the ability to sue this administration. And so some of the legal action, while I agree it's not going to come from the U.S. Attorney General, Pam Bondi, who spends as much time, I think, at Fox News as she does at the Justice Department. But it may come from the states. And it will keep alive the very stories, as Al points out, that the Trump administration doesn't want covered. So I think that is going to be a factor as we go forward. The other thing I say to people who say, well, what are we going to do? What are we going to do? Is, look, you have got to have laser-like focus on the midterm elections. I say this even to my friends who are for Donald Trump. If you continue to condone and support and tell pollsters that you approve of what he's doing, you're going to see Republicans run out of office. And if either the Senate or the House, and if both were to flip, I don't like the idea, but you would have 2 years of investigations by a Congress led by Democrats. And when you look at the polling, Trump is not adding to his base. He is playing to the 30-some% who are going to support him no matter what he does. But in doing so, he's continuing to erode the support that Republicans need to get reelected. Every Republican House member, as well as Democrats, are up for election next year. A third of the Senate. So if people are concerned by what they're seeing, and the polling certainly suggests they are in fairly large numbers, then the midterm elections are where you're going to have an impact. And it's not just, it would be a huge impact on Election Day if the House or Senate were to flip. But next year, people who have to run for office are going to be even more focused and concentrated on their reelection and what it's going to take to get reelected. And I think, as we talked about last week, you'll see more Republicans trying to get on the right side of some of these issues, which won't be standing with the Trump administration and will, if it's at all possible, moderate him. But I think we're in, by everything one sees and hears, I think we're in for a very reckless, another 18 months or so.
Al, you have the last word.
One of the major issues and concerns I have is that with Trump's policies of basically destroying our alliances, going after our allies, and sucking up to our adversaries, our enemies, and he's destroyed the world order that's kept the peace. He's with his tariffs, he's destroying the economic order that ironically has made us the strongest economy in the world. And while, our relationships with China have not been perfect, and China has done a lot of things that we need to deal with, we still have done a pretty good job of with countries like Japan and South Korea of pretty much isolating China until the tariffs. But the leaders of China and South Korea and Japan, who have never had a very good relationship, I believe, have met in the last couple of weeks because they're, the faith of our allies that we will have their back economically or militarily is diminished greatly. And that's a major cause, a major cost to our country. I agree with Craig, the midterm elections are the key. How do you stop him? The courts are going to try, and we'll see. At some point, the Supreme Court is going to have to come down one way or another. And if it comes down against him in a clear way, then we'll really see whether or not he will abide. I heard Rahm Emanuel say yesterday, we'll see whether the black robes really are the robes of justice or a Halloween costume. If he moves in some other ways, like try to use the military to enforce things domestically. We'll see if the generals stand up to him. That was an important thing in the first Trump administration. Craig mentioned he's out in California where Governor Newsom has sued over the tariffs. I don't believe that's a frivolous suit. California is the fifth largest economy in the world, largest manufacturing state in the country, believe it or not. It is, I mean, it's so big, it's really the largest in almost every category. Uh, and also the largest agricultural. It's going to be very much affected by the tariffs. And basically, what I understand the suit is it's parallel to some of the legislation that is starting to pop up in the Congress that would take away or that would make it clear that Congress has the power in the end to to set tariff levels. But you also have the states, and think about things like elections. If with Trump, who despite everything he says, doesn't believe a bit in fair elections, and because a fair election for Trump is defined with him winning. But he can't do a federal election law because the elections are run in the states. Our system is messy and sometimes inefficient and all that, but there are an awful lot. Ed Muskie once told me that the inefficiencies of Congress will eventually, may sometimes save our liberties, but the inefficiencies of our federal system may turn out to be very important in this time. But really, as Craig said, the time you got to get the best way and the cleanest way to stop Trump is to vote him and his party out of power. And I guarantee you, if the Democrats are smart, and Gavin Newsom had a line the other day that I think is really right. He said, Democrats don't just need to make noise, they've got to make sense. And things like focusing on the tariff are making sense. Tying Trump to the performance of the economy that hurts ordinary people, making sense. Coming up with big, left-wing ideas is not, makes a lot of noise and it gets a lot of people excited, but it doesn't make sense. So if the Democrats are smart and make this a referendum on Trump, if his policies work, he'll be okay. But if history prevails and his policies work as I think Craig and I think they will, we're likely to see a big Democratic sweep in 2026.
Well, Al, from Craig Fuller, thank you so much indeed. We will see you next week.